What happens when one of the most controversial women in the world sits down for what should be a simple late-night interview, only to watch it spiral into complete and utter chaos? In just under 15 minutes, a routine promotional appearance transforms into television's most shocking confrontation of the year. The cameras are rolling, the audience is watching, and nobody, absolutely nobody, is prepared for what happens next. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like this video. We bring you the most explosive celebrity moments every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's get into it. The familiar opening music fills the studio as the show begins. Seth emerges to enthusiastic applause, his smile genuine, his energy infectious. He launches into his monologue, hitting jokes about politics, pop culture, and the general absurdity of modern life. The audience laughs. The mood is light. Then comes the moment. "Okay, we have a great show for you tonight," Seth announces, settling behind his desk. "Our guest this evening is someone who has been at the center of global conversation for years now. She's a former actress, a duchess, a philanthropist, and someone who has never been afraid to speak her mind. Please welcome Meghan Markle." The applause is warm as Meghan emerges from backstage. She walks with practiced poise, her smile wide, her wave rehearsed to perfection. She crosses to Seth. They share a brief hug, and she settles into the guest chair with the grace of someone who has done this hundreds of times. "Thank you so much for being here," Seth says, his voice genuinely welcoming. "I know you've had a busy schedule." "Thank you for having me, Seth," Meghan replies. Her tone is pleasant enough, but there's something underneath it. A tightness, perhaps, or a wariness. Like she's already preparing for an attack that hasn't come. "So," Seth begins, leaning forward with friendly interest, "you've been working on some exciting projects lately. Tell us about what you've been up to." Meghan tilts her head slightly, her smile thinning almost imperceptibly. "Well, I've been focused on work that actually matters, work that makes a difference. Not everyone in this industry can say that." It's a subtle dig, but Seth catches it. His eyebrows rise just a fraction, but he keeps his composure. "Right, of course. Your foundation work has been getting a lot of attention. What can you tell us about that?" "What I can tell you," Meghan says, leaning back in her chair, "is that we're doing things that actually impact people's lives. Not just surface-level celebrity nonsense, but real, substantive change. It's exhausting, honestly, seeing so many people in positions of influence waste their platforms on meaningless content." The audience shifts slightly. This isn't the warm, promotional conversation they expected. Seth nods slowly, maintaining his professional demeanor. "That's admirable. Having a sense of purpose in your work is..." "Purpose isn't enough, though," Meghan interrupts. "You need vision, intelligence, the ability to see beyond what everyone else sees. That's what separates people who actually make a difference from people who just exist in the spotlight." There's a pause. Seth's smile becomes slightly more fixed. "I'm sure a lot of people work very hard to make a difference in their own ways," he offers diplomatically. Meghan laughs, but it's not a warm laugh. It's dismissive, almost contemptuous. "Hard work? Please, I've seen what passes for hard work in this industry. Most people think showing up is enough. They think saying the right things at the right events counts as activism. It's embarrassing, really." Seth shifts in his seat. The energy in the room has changed, cooling several degrees in just a few exchanges. "Well," he says, trying to steer back to safer ground, "let's talk about what inspired this particular initiative. What was the moment that... What inspired me?" Meghan cuts him off, her tone sharpening. "I'm constantly inspired because I'm constantly aware. I see things other people miss. I notice patterns, problems, opportunities for change. Most people just sleepwalk through life, consuming whatever they're fed without questioning it. I've never been like that. I've always been different." Seth's jaw tightens slightly, but his voice remains calm. "I think a lot of people do think critically about the world around them. Maybe not always about the same issues you focus on, but..." "But what?" Meghan leans forward, her eyes narrowing. "But they're too busy watching television, too busy laughing at jokes that aren't even funny, too busy pretending that shows like this actually matter." The studio falls completely silent. Even the camera operators seem to freeze. Seth stares at her for a moment, processing what she just said. When he speaks, his voice is quiet but firm. "I'm sorry. Are you saying this show doesn't matter?" Meghan shrugs with studied indifference. I'm saying most of television is a distraction. People use it to avoid dealing with real issues. They watch these programs and they laugh and they clap, and then they go home and nothing changes, nothing improves. It's just noise. A murmur ripples through the audience. Some people look uncomfortable. Others look angry. Seth's trademark warmth has begun to fade, replaced by something more guarded. Well, he says carefully, I'd like to think we do more than that here. We try to inform, to entertain, to create meaningful conversations about meaningful conversations? Meghan interrupts again, her voice dripping with condescension. Seth, please. You ask celebrities about their movies and tell jokes about politicians. That's not meaningful. That's filler. It's the intellectual equivalent of fast food. The audience gasps. Actual, audible gasps. Seth sits back in his chair, clearly recalibrating. His expression has shifted from friendly host to something closer to a man who has just been slapped. Okay, he says slowly. Well, regardless of how you feel about the format, you did agree to come on the show. You're here. So clearly you think there's some value in reaching this audience. Meghan waves her hand dismissively. I'm here because my team said it would be good for visibility. That's all. Not because I think this is some amazing platform for change. Let's be honest about what this is. The tension in the room has become almost unbearable. Seth's smile has disappeared entirely now, replaced by a look of controlled frustration. Thank you for your honesty, I guess, he says, and there's no missing the sarcasm in his voice. You're welcome, Meghan replies, either missing or deliberately ignoring his tone. Honesty is important. Too many people in this industry just say what they think others want to hear. They perform gratitude and humility while thinking entirely different thoughts. I refuse to do that. I have integrity. Integrity, Seth repeats, the word hanging in the air like an accusation. So, when you agreed to come on this show that you apparently think is meaningless, that was integrity. Meghan's eyes flash dangerously. I think you're deliberately twisting my words. I'm using your words, Seth counters, his voice gaining an edge. Your exact words. You said television is a distraction. You said this show is just noise. You said you're only here because your publicist told you to be. Those are direct quotes, Meghan. Not interpretations, not spin, just what you said. Context matters, Meghan snaps. You're taking everything out of context to make me look bad. Seth actually laughs, though there's no humor in it. We're literally in the context right now. This is the context. You're sitting here on my show, insulting the audience, insulting me, and then claiming I'm taking things out of context. That's quite a trick. I haven't insulted you, Meghan protests, though her voice has risen defensively. You said what we do here doesn't matter, Seth states firmly. You said it's empty noise. You called it the intellectual equivalent of fast food. How is that not an insult? Meghan throws her hands up in exasperation. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Everyone is so sensitive now. Nobody can handle honest criticism. Everything has to be wrapped in compliments and fake smiles and hollow flattery. I'm trying to have a real conversation, and you're getting defensive because you can't handle the truth. I'm not defensive, Seth says, his voice controlled, but his frustration increasingly evident. I'm responding to someone who came onto my show and has spent the entire interview being condescending to everyone in this room. There's a difference. Condescending? Meghan's voice rises an octave. I'm being honest, that's all. Just because you don't like what I'm saying doesn't make it condescending. It makes you uncomfortable with reality. Seth leans forward, his gaze steady. You told this audience that they sleepwalk through life. You said most people don't actually think. You implied that hard work by ordinary people is embarrassing. You've suggested multiple times that you're somehow superior to everyone here. That's not honesty, Meghan. That's arrogance dressed up as candor. Meghan stands up abruptly, her chair rolling backward with the sudden movement. Several audience members flinch at the unexpected action. I don't have to sit here and be attacked, she declares, her voice sharp with indignation. Attacked? Seth actually laughs again, but it's a bitter sound. You've spent the last 10 minutes attacking everyone except yourself. I've been trying to have a normal interview, the kind of interview we do every night with people who manage to be both interesting and respectful, and you've turned it into whatever this is. This is me refusing to play your little game. Meghan says, her hands clenched at her sides. This whole setup, the fake laughs, the scripted banter, the pretending that any of this matters, I'm not doing it. I won't compromise who I am just to make you or your audience comfortable. I'm not asking you to compromise who you are, Seth says, standing up now too, his full height making the confrontation feel even more intense. I'm asking you to show basic respect to the crew who worked all day to have you here, to the audience who came to see a show, to me who invited you as a guest. That's not compromise. That's basic human decency. Decency, Meghan scoffs, the word coming out like a curse. You want to talk about decency? What about the decency of honest conversation? What about the decency of not forcing people to pretend everything is wonderful when it's not? What about the decency of actually challenging the status quo instead of just reinforcing it with empty entertainment? You can challenge the status quo without being rude, Seth counters, his voice rising to match hers. You can have honest conversations without insulting people. You can be authentic without being cruel. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, no matter what you seem to believe. I'm not being cruel, Meghan insists, but her voice has become shrill. I'm being real, and if you can't handle real, that's your problem. That's always been the problem with everyone around me. Nobody wants to hear the truth. Nobody wants to acknowledge that I see things they can't see. Seth shakes his head slowly, and when he speaks, his voice has dropped to something almost sad. No, real would be acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, you've been incredibly disrespectful tonight. Real would be recognizing that you don't have to tear other people down to build yourself up. Real would be apologizing for coming onto someone's show and treating them and their entire audience like they're beneath you. Apologizing. Meghan's laugh is harsh, almost manic. For what? For refusing to play your game? For not pretending you're doing something groundbreaking here? You want me to apologize for telling the truth about an industry that has done nothing but lie about me for years? I want you to apologize for being unnecessarily cruel, Seth says simply, his voice quiet but firm. That's all. Just acknowledge that you've been unkind. It's not that hard. Most people learn how to do it when they're children. The dig lands. Meghan's face flushes red, her composure cracking visibly. I don't think I've been unkind, she says through gritted teeth. I think I've been honest, and you're too fragile, too accustomed to people fawning over you, to handle hearing something real for once in your life. The audience is frozen. Some people look furious, some look shocked, some appear deeply uncomfortable, as if they have accidentally walked into a private argument and don't know how to leave. Seth takes a long, slow breath. His shoulders drop slightly and something in his expression shifts from frustration to resolution. You know what? He says finally. I think we're done here. Meghan blinks. Excuse me? We're done, Seth repeats, his voice calm but absolute. This interview is over. I'm not going to continue giving you a platform to insult everyone in this room, including the crew members who have worked all day to make this show happen, the audience who gave up their evening to be here, and yes, myself. You can't just end the interview, Meghan protests, something like panic flickering across her features. Actually, I can, Seth says quietly. It's my show. My name is on the door. And I get to decide when a guest has crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. You crossed it about 5 minutes ago. I gave you chances to walk it back, to show some self-awareness, to demonstrate even a shred of the grace you claim to value. You didn't take any of them. Meghan's face cycles through several emotions: shock, disbelief, fury, before settling on cold anger. This is unbelievable. You invite me here, and then you kick me off because I won't play along with your shallow charade. I'm asking you to leave because you've been disrespectful, dismissive, and frankly cruel to people who did absolutely nothing to deserve it, Seth says, his voice steady. Not because you won't play along, because you've been genuinely unkind. There's a difference, even if you can't see it. Fine, Meghan snaps, reaching for her microphone. I'll leave gladly. This was a complete waste of my time anyway. I should have known better than to expect anything substantive from a show like this. Then we agree on something, Seth says quietly. This has been a waste of time, just not for the reasons you think. Meghan rips off her microphone, the wire tangling for a moment before she yanks it free with more force than necessary. A small shower of sparks, or perhaps just the sound of expensive equipment being mistreated, accompanies the gesture. "You're going to regret this," she hisses, her voice low, but carrying clearly through the silent studio. "When people see what you've done here tonight, I think people are seeing exactly what's happening," Seth replies calmly. "And I don't think I'm the one who's going to come out of this with regrets." Meghan's eyes widen with fury. "Do you have any idea who I am? Do you have any idea the kind of influence I have, the platform I command? You just made a huge mistake, Seth, the kind of mistake that people in your position don't recover from." The threat hangs in the air, ugly and naked. But Seth doesn't flinch. "The only mistake I made tonight was not ending this sooner," he says. "When you started insulting my audience, I should have stopped you then. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I assumed you were having a bad day, that maybe something I said had come across wrong. I was being charitable. And you repaid that charity by doubling down on contempt." "This isn't over," Meghan says, her voice trembling with rage. "Yes," Seth replies firmly. "It is. Goodbye, Meghan." For a long moment, they stand there facing each other, the late-night host and the Duchess of Sussex, locked in a confrontation that neither expected and neither can undo. The audience watches in breathless silence, aware that they're witnessing something they'll be telling people about for years. Then Meghan turns on her heel and begins walking toward the backstage exit. Her heels click sharply against the floor, each step echoing through the silent studio like a countdown. But she can't resist one final moment. Right before she reaches the exit, she stops. She turns. She looks directly at Seth, and when she speaks, her voice is cold enough to freeze the air around her. "You're nothing," she says. "You and this show and everything you think you've built, it's nothing, and deep down, you know it. That's why this bothers you so much, because I'm right, and you can't stand it." The audience erupts, not in applause, in boos, actual, sustained, unmistakable boos that fill the studio like a wave. They're booing her, loudly, firmly, completely. Meghan's face goes from red to white in an instant. Whatever reaction she expected, it wasn't this. She expected them to be on her side, maybe, or at least to be neutral, to see her point. Instead, they've turned against her completely and vocally. Her mouth opens as if to respond, but no words come. The booing continues, growing if anything louder, more insistent. Some people are shaking their heads. Others are gesturing toward the exit. The message is unmistakable. You've overstayed your welcome. Without another word, Meghan turns and disappears through the exit. Seth stands there for a long moment, letting the energy in the room settle. The audience gradually quiets, the boos giving way to murmurs and then to a strange, heavy silence. Finally, Seth turns to the camera. His expression is difficult to read. Exhaustion, maybe, mixed with something like vindication and something like sadness. "Well," he says, and his voice is surprisingly light given everything that just happened. "That was certainly something." A few nervous laughs ripple through the audience. "We're going to take a quick break," Seth continues, his professionalism reasserting itself through sheer force of will. "When we come back, we'll have our musical guest, who I'm told is genuinely happy to be here and has no plans to insult anyone. We'll be right back." The theme music plays, the cameras cut. The audience breaks into applause, supportive applause now, sympathetic applause. They're clapping for Seth, for the way he handled an impossible situation, for the dignity he maintained even when his guest had none. Seth sits back down at his desk. Someone hands him a glass of water. He takes a long drink, and if his hands shake slightly, nobody mentions it. "That really happened, huh?" he says to his bandleader, who's staring at him with wide eyes. "That really happened," Fred Armisen confirms from behind his drums. Seth nods slowly, processing. Okay, let's do a show." And they do. The rest of the episode goes on. The musical guest performs. Seth does his jokes. The audience laughs and cheers, and gradually, the tension from earlier begins to dissipate, replaced by the familiar warmth of a late-night show, doing what late-night shows do. But nobody forgets. Nobody who was in that room, nobody watching at home, nobody who hears about it later forgets what happened on that Thursday night at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Because it wasn't just an argument. It wasn't just a difficult guest. It wasn't just a clash of personalities or a misunderstanding that got out of hand. It was a moment where someone revealed exactly who they were beneath the carefully constructed image. And it wasn't pretty. It was a moment where entitlement met reality and lost. It was a moment where someone who thought they were untouchable discovered that Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And when you treat people with contempt, eventually they respond in kind. Meghan walked off that stage thinking she had won something, thinking she had exposed the shallowness of late-night television, exposed Seth's fragility, exposed the whole hollow nature of an industry she claimed to despise while continuously courting its attention. But all she really exposed was herself, her attitude, her arrogance, her complete lack of awareness about how she was coming across, her inability to distinguish between honesty and cruelty, between confidence and condescension, between being misunderstood and being wrong. And in that exposure, in that moment of raw, unfiltered reality, everyone watching learned something. They learned that kindness doesn't mean being a doormat, that being a good host doesn't mean tolerating abuse, that there's a line, and when someone crosses it, they need to be told. Seth did the telling, not because he wanted to, not because he planned it, but because in that moment, someone had to. And he was there, and he didn't back down. The interview lasted less than 15 minutes total. 15 minutes that felt like hours to everyone involved. 15 minutes that got replayed and dissected and analyzed for days, weeks, months afterward. 15 minutes that changed everything. So, what do you think? Was Seth right to kick Meghan off the show, or did things go too far? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. We've got more incredible stories coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next.